Right, so I have returned once again today to actually deliver a stream of Golden Kamuy, the third season. YouTube any day now, do believe in thee. Let's save a single stream. She are good to go. So you actually have a return, actually episode 3 or episode 27 of Golden Kamuy, the actual anime series, and also the episode 3 of the third season. So that's correctly in the end. And as we know, holy shit, episode 2 or 26. My god, was there a lot happening? Was there a lot happening? It was the heat in that episode. Jesus Christ Almighty, it was intense. One could possibly actually theorize that you can actually probably heat in a whole entire country with the amount of heat those men exhibited in that one episode. God damn, it was amazing. It's a whole lot of muscle. Like all the muscle in that one episode took up like at least half the entire screen per frame. I was like, bruh, there's like no frame left. All there is just muscle, and I'm living for it. I'm living for this. So yeah, I mean, we kind of seen everyone now at this point. Everyone's now back. We actually have a Silipus team as well, consisting of a very, 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 very not evil Catman and everyone else. And also, yeah, I mean, the ball is now starting to roll when it comes to narrative. Where it takes us is yet to be seen. So anyway, let's put on Twitter actually gone live. Right, I do believe with that we should be good to go. Most certainly are. Yep. Okay, let's get a show on the road then. Let's see what happens this week's episode of Golden Kamuy. So start this thing in 3, 2, 1. They start this thing absolutely now. He's there. Josh is one of the people that I always kind of fear around anything at this point because he might just get hurt. Is there no AP this week? Is there no AP this week? Interesting. They really do love focusing on Agatha though, don't they? Even though we do know he actually did in theory do a very, very massive event in the previous season, but I do actually kind of like how they do in theory kind of characterize the world building in this show. It does do quite a good job actually, even as catastrophic events that kind of change the course of the narrative happen. It doesn't mean anything essentially towards actually learning. It doesn't stop us learning about the whole entire world. It's kind of really well done for that reason. That's what I really like about the show. Like, in essence, it always constantly world builds to the point that you're always learning something every single episode. So I got to. See, I don't know whether or not I'm actually missed Ogata or actually just missed Suda as well. That's a problem. The man can turn any single sentence into like the greatest sentence in the universe. This man could read me like the most boring story in the universe, but I'll be like, bro, give me every single word right now. I need to listen to that. God damn you, Suda. I'm sure we don't want to trust Ogata right now. That's a massive thing right now. It's a massive blip in the entire narrative. It's like, do we trust the boy who put a bullet through Sugimoto, but also then put a bullet through Wilk as well? Do we trust this man at this point? I trust him. I've missed these three so much. I do kind of appreciate that, like, not one single group has like a completely functional group. Every single group is just like the most dysfunctional group in the universe. It's just something that kind of makes you just go, how the hell are they actually still kind of like functioning essentially? It's great. We've got Arisaka back this week as well. We've got Arisaka back this week. Best boy. Can't say goodbye to our boy just yet. He's the good boy. He really wants to get beaten up constantly. Let's not forget that point. he's a goodest boy. Man's got incredible eyelashes though when you think about it. Like, Gensoku's got incredible eyelashes. I mean, you got to somehow yeet him into a pool of water. Somehow. You gotta have him charge at you and just like duck and then push him into water, and that's actually somehow how you get Sugimoto back. Was that a little bit of foreshadowing there, Tsukishima? Was that a little bit of foreshadowing there? Can you, like, admire this boy? Goddamn Tsurumi, though. technically speaking, the only character actually haven't had any backstory for just yet at this point, or has been really shrouded in mystery, is Tsukushima's character. He's the one that's kind of like, we've seen well, I haven't seen Koito's one either, technically speaking, just yet. But, yeah, I mean, his one's important to actually understanding a lot more about how other things work in the show. This is very appreciative to actually get that right at this point. So it does also kind of in very, it kind of then adds a little level of like similarity to the characters as well, because now we kind of have the idea of loss, essentially, with a lot of the characters in the show. So even though they're very vastly different in character, they're very similar in actually how they, they're similar in nature in some ways. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I still can't get past how, like, just how, like, swag Surumi actually is, though. The man commands a scene. And that is what in the business we would say at this point, Jesus Christ. God damn. What the hell, man? Because there's also up a lot about the actual life of the characters as well. It's not just like the events that transpire in the show itself, but also kind of like from the external point of view, like the idea of actually how the characters' lives in a way, and actually how sometimes the one that Tsukushima actually wanted to give her might not have been the kind of like the best thing in the world, but then, as we know, there's more to it. It's interesting in that way because it kind of does in theory tell a lot more about how then the world works. And there you are. And there you are. And there you are. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's one of those things that you kind of do in theory learn about how the world works through the lens of the characters. Like events that the characters are participating in then give you an indication actually how then the world works. Uh-oh. This episode's a lot more about how Surumi is as a person as well. Surumi's really good at talking. That's the thing with Surumi's character. He could get anyone on his side essentially because he actually has the ability to actually like talk to people like in the correct way. Essentially, he's a commander. He has the qualities of what a commander has. Essentially, he has the ability to lead. He has the ability to speak, as well. Like he's basically like the kind of like the definition of how a person should lead. Essentially, even if it's detrimental. So I find so fascinating about Surumi's character is that you can sell your story and you'll believe it. That's the thing. You sell your story and you believe it, and it's actually in the end it can be completely fabricated. But until you find out, you're literally none the wiser. And practically speaking, it's actually kind of scary when you think about it as well. Also does go back to the whole entire idea of like the person on the battlefield as well. Which I guess has always been a running theme in this whole entire show with certain characters, is the idea of who they are on the battlefield versus how they leave, essentially, what it does in theory do to the person. Ooh! Could that be, well, I was gonna say, could that be our boy, but it is. Interestingly enough, they do cross paths. At this point, Sugimoto's cross paths with, I think, pretty much most of the characters in this show. In one way or another, before this whole entire show took place. Which in its own way is quite interesting. There's a lot to unpack in this episode when you think about it. A lot from a character point of view, and a lot from a world kind of point of view as well. See. It's one of those things you just don't know if you can trust Surumi's character. I mean, it's one of those things that maybe it's an obvious thing to say, that you can't trust him, but the problem is with Surumi's character is he's so damn convincing. And it's kind of like, it's the most scariest thing of it all, that he's so goddamn convincing as a character, that you could believe anything he says. Even if it is a complete fabrication, you wouldn't figure it out until, like, unless someone tells you, by the way, he's telling you a bunch of lies, bro. And there we are. That is the birth of there's a birth of the new Surumi and also the new Tsukushima as well. That was a really well done episode. It was actually really well done in the manga as well, because it's one of those things you didn't really know much about him until at that very one point. You're kind of like, oh shit, so that's what happens with Tsukushima. So you're kind of like, okay, so now you understand why now you understand the divine loyalty actually kind of doesn't really have to Surumi. Granted, the issue you have with the whole entirety of the events that are being telling to you is that you kind of always are on your toes, because Surumi, as I said beforehand, is one of those characters that can in theory sell you anything, and you'd be like, I'd be hard pressed to actually say he's lying to me, until someone points out to you it's one of those things that you could in theory interpret it to be the truth. Like in essence, that maybe his dad came along and actually did in theory actually like kill his fiance, make it out to like suicide, but also then possibly the entire thing transpire like that. That's the thing. He could make you believe that because he's that goddamn convincing. He's got a convincing aura about him that you can't actually say that he's lying to you because there's nothing in his voice that tells you he is. And that in of itself is the most terrifying thing about him. He's essentially a leader through and through, but one of the more terrifying ones I've seen in anime and manga because you can't really gauge his actual character because you have no this is actually happening next week. Oh yes. Oh god, this chapter of the manga was great. My god. Konbanwa, Genki desu ka? I hope you're doing well. Also, ohayou gozaimasu as well. I should also say because I know it's morning. I'm actually glad you're actually here as well. Thank you for joining me. But yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting episode. Like because there's a lot essentially in this episode. It's more or less there's something that doesn't really tell you about how the world works from the point of view of like how the life that one character could in theory give someone versus the life of luxury essentially, and actually what it doesn't really mean to someone, and actually how that entire thing transpires versus the idea of actually what it means to lead and actually how you have to do that to actually kind of get these people on your side, because as we know you can't technically lead an entire army saying, well, bros, don't worry about it, we can do this, just march on, bros. There's no way in hell you can do that because there's just nothing in there. Your words are basically empty. So you need to kind of have that level of prowess to yourself that kind of allows you to actually kind of be able to speak and actually be able to kind of like lead. Surumi actually has that, and Surumi's terrifying because of it, because he's able to get you on his side in no short time. The man can just get you on his side, and he actually would be like, okay, fine, that's okay, I believe you. Because the circumstances in which Tsukushima left, anything could have happened. That's the problem. The other issue that actually didn't really transpire here is the idea of the situation which Tsukushima found himself in. And that was the issue, because you could have, in theory, said anything, he would have believed you, because you weren't there, essentially. You have no idea how to gauge the entirety of the time which you until you left and actually went back. So that whole entire thing, an entire storyline could in theory have been birthed from it, which in theory, there was multiple in the end. So that in of itself is kind of interesting, because it does in theory tell you there and then, like, the idea of actually what happens in the point in which you leave versus the point in which you come back, because as we've always seen in these kind of narratives, nothing's exactly the same when you come back. But from this point of view, it's interesting to see what does in theory kind of go into this whole entire event, like what happens to actually get someone on your side. Because it was one of those things that, in the end, he didn't fully convince Brass to actually kind of get him off death row, but then also join his army and actually then fully get him to actually kind of swear loyalty. That's the one. I say swore loyalty, but swear loyalty. That's the other thing to know, because getting him off, and actually joining the army was one thing. But then to actually convince him again that, yeah, don't worry about it, bro, it's not a problem. Like, you just swear loyalty to me because we're actually going to do something about this whole entire problem, is another thing. And it just tells you there and then, he's fucking terrifying. Like, Surumi's one of the more terrifying characters probably ever exists in anime and manga, because you can't... You just don't know who's bullshitting you or who's telling you the truth. He could in theory tell you anything, and you'd be like, well, I don't know how to feel. What is these emotions? And that's the problem. But that's his advantage. That's the thing. We know, because we've seen it the whole entire time. And this isn't the first instance it happens. But we know from perspective that this character actually is able to manipulate in a way. Actually, he's able to actually bend people to his actual kind of whim. I mean, Koito, technically speaking, though there's more to him, at this point, understand that's actually kind of true. How Koito sees Surumi is an indication to actually how Surumi is as a person. And then we have Tsukushima's character. Though that's not the entire thing. That's the problem. There's so much more to Surumi's character. It actually doesn't really add a lot more to him. The problem is he's very charismatic in the way he speaks. And in doing so, it kind of allows that whole entire idea to actually kind of... It allows whatever he's telling you to actually kind of just make you believe it. Essentially, just you can't ever say that, oh god, he's bullshitting me at this point, because you don't know. That's the problem. But the other thing to note also, what was interesting is the characters. The characters themselves. They're very interesting because essentially they're very much similar in a lot of regards, even though they're very vastly different. Because Sugimoto and Tsukishima, in a way, are quite similar. They both experienced loss in their own way, and actually how it doesn't fully shape them, and actually what doesn't fully kind of constitute as what happens afterwards. Essentially, the person you leave on the battlefield, and that's kind of like that's the overall kind of theme it doesn't fully present in the show, because each character that actually hasn't fully been a part of the Russo-Japanese War has that aura about them, is like who they are after they're left. What happened to them, essentially. We've seen with Tsukishima that he doesn't very actually have that divine loyalty to Tsurumi, Koito as well. Sugimoto actually has that level of kind of like what would have happened essentially with his character, the idea of the past kind of manifesting itself into the future, and what it doesn't free do to the shape a person, and how it doesn't free then change him as time goes on, especially after what happens in the war. But yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to see how that theme doesn't really play into most characters. And also, we had Tanigaki as well. Theoretically speaking, Ogata as well, because again, there's more to Ogata than just, by the way, he might in theory be a crazy cat man. There's way more to Ogata than just that. That we'll probably see it in this season, I think. I think we'll probably see it in this season. Ogata's actual backstory, even more than before. Let's be on the watch out for that one. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see that these characters all in some way have experienced loss. And that, in of itself, is interesting because, frankly speaking, how the show presents these characters, they're not in tune with one another. That's why I always say, these characters are so unintune? Is that the correct term? Unintune? That they would never work together as a group. But theoretically speaking, there's one thread that actually kind of weaves them all together that actually kind of takes what is otherwise a dysfunctional group and actually makes it into an actual functional group. That's the idea of loss. The idea of loss is a theme that plays into all of the characters, even though they don't know it consciously themselves, that they all experience something similar to one another. It's there. We know it. And it's actually one of those things that kind of makes the characters feel a lot more tighter in that way, a lot more closer. And it's actually kind of interesting because of it, how we kind of get this different perspective on the characters because of the idea that they've experienced this loss that they don't know they've experienced as well. And also the other idea is actually how Sugimoto kind of doesn't very actually feed into all of the characters as well. Actually how he hasn't very impacted them as well. All these things do in theory actually kind of work together. And I also liked how, theoretically speaking, when Tsukishima mentions, don't go berserk because if you do, you'll regret it. And it was true in his own way, but when you actually kind of factor into Sugimoto's character, it's more of a ticking time bomb at this point, essentially. Like, in essence, he's planted a Chekhov gun to actually say, at some stage, his berserk mode might come back, actually hinder something else. Because at this point, it's very unpredictable what's going to happen with Sugimoto's character. In a way, Noida actually introducing the idea of, like, Ogata going berserk. That'd be an interesting twist. No, Sugimoto going berserk kind of makes the entirety of like the can't speak now. Makes the future of this whole entire anime a lot more uncertain because we just don't know what can really happen. We had the whole entire event with Wilk and Ogata. That in of itself proved that you can't predict what's going to happen later on. So now adding on to this, we have the idea of Sugimoto kind of going berserk at any point. Tsukishima kind of saying if you do, you'll regret it. So that in of itself kind of plants this whole entire like problem that might go off at any point. We just don't know when. And that's the thing. That's the more interesting part about this whole entire anime. Is actually like theorizing what could in theory transpire later on to this whole entire anime. And it's kind of terrifying. And now we actually know how Tsurumi kind of was, frankly speaking, born, and also how Tsukishima actually was, frankly speaking, also reborn. It's interesting to see how now every single event we've actually seen kind of makes more sense now, considering actually now we know more about these characters, actually what did in theory transpire, because a lot of what Noda actually introduces does also then in theory kind of change how you see previous events, actually how you see character motivations now. So it makes a lot more sense why characters act the way they do, and actually how they act and how they react to certain situations. Though, this is still early days, episode 3 of season 3, we'll probably see more of this as time goes on. I can't wait to actually see what does in 3 transpire. So yes, that is me done for today. So as always, goshicho arigatou gozaimasu. Boku no doga wo omoshiroi to omota ra ine ya channel toruku wo onegai shimasu. So as always, if you have enjoyed this whole entire stream as a whole on YouTube Doom 3, leave a like because indeed it's been quite a bit. If you have enjoyed this whole entire stream as a whole on YouTube Doom 3, leave a sub because indeed it's been quite a bit. If you have enjoyed this whole entire stream as a whole on YouTube Doom 3, leave a follow on Twitter or join Discord as well, because both do help me quite a lot, and both will then tell you when streams go live and any other streams I do as well. But until next time, some more Golden Kamuy the 3rd season. See you guys later.